Also, all of my notes are going to be on this side of the screen, which is why I will be looking over there quite a bit. So without further ado, let us get into it. Carly Gregg lived with her mother, Ashley Smile, and her stepfather, Heath Smile. Ashley, a dedicated 40-year-old high school math teacher, was known for her commitment to her students and her role as an educator at Northwest Rankin High School. Despite a seemingly stable and loving relationship with her daughter, Ashley and Carly's relationship had its challenges. One notable source of tension was Carly's secret marijuana use, which her mother had recently discovered at the time of the case. This issue caused considerable strain between them, and Ashley had expressed concern for Carly's behavior and well-being. Carly's relationship with her stepfather, Heath, was less publicly discussed, but it's clear that the Smile family had firearms in the home. This included a .357 Magnum pistol, an unloaded shotgun, an AR-15, and a Glock, all stored in the same safe. The presence of weapons in the household would later play a significant role in the events that transpired. A crucial aspect of Carly's background and the case background is her mental health history. Carly had been struggling with depression and self-harm for some time before the incident. She also began to experience auditory hallucinations and mood swings, which her family and those around her noted as part of her ongoing mental health challenges. Carly's mental health deteriorated further due to medication, which exacerbated her emotional instability and led to periods of disassociation. In addition to the mental health issues, Carly was facing personal and familial stress as she felt increasingly alienated from her mother, whom she saw as strict and unyielding in her efforts to control Carly's behavior. The sense of disconnection between mother and daughter, combined with Carly's emotional turmoil, formed a volatile relationship backdrop for what would ultimately unfold. In March of 2024, the cumulative, I can never say this word, pressures on Carly, her troubled relationship with her mother, her mental health struggles, and her inability to cope with the growing tensions reached a boiling point. Carly, at one point, allegedly made plans to kill her mother and then invited a friend to her home to see the body after the act was carried out. This chilling detail underscored the depth of Carly's emotional breakdown. On the afternoon of March 19th, 2024, the tragic events that would forever alter the lives of Carly Gregg and her family began to unfold. Carly returned home from school around the early afternoon. She and Ashley, who was a math teacher at the same high school, had been at odds in recent days due to their troubled relationship. The tension had been building, and as soon as Carly entered the house, the two began arguing. The topic of their dispute was again Carly's marijuana use, which Ashley had discovered and which had led to an ongoing clash between them. Carly felt increasingly controlled and alienated by her mother's disapproval. shot Ashley in the neck, instantly killing her. The moment was chaotic, with Carly's emotions spiraling as she realized the gravity of what she had just done. Despite the violence, Carly showed little immediate remorse for her actions. After Ashley collapsed, lifeless on the floor, Carly didn't immediately flee or try to cover up the crime in a typical way. Instead, she appeared to go into some kind of disassociated state. She contacted a friend, inviting them to her home under the pretense that something serious had occurred. The friend, unaware of what exactly had happened, arrived at the house later that day. When the friend walked in, Carly led them to Ashley's body. Carly reportedly asked her friend, "Are you squeamish around dead bodies?" before showing them the lifeless body of her mother, which was covered with a bloody towel. Carly's casual, almost indifferent demeanor in the face of such a horrific act was chilling. Her friend was horrified and left the house immediately, unsure of how to react to what they had just witnessed. Soon after the shooting, Carly's stepfather, Keith Smile, arrived home. He had been at work earlier that day, and when he returned, he found his wife, Ashley, dead. He was horrified by the sight of her body and immediately became fearful of what might happen next. Carly, still in the midst of her emotional breakdown, confronted Heath and allegedly attempted to shoot him as well. A struggle ensued between the two, during which Carly shot at Heath, grazing him with a bullet. Despite being injured, Heath managed to overpower Carly and wrestle the gun from her hands. The confrontation left him bleeding, but he was able to make his way outside and call 911 for help. He told the dispatcher, frantic and shocked, that Carly had shot him and killed his wife. Law enforcement responded swiftly to the emergency call, arriving at the home shortly after Heath's distressing phone call. They found Heath outside, injured but alive, and quickly secured him while they entered the house. Inside, they discovered Ashley's body, again covered with the bloody towel, and began processing the scene. They also found Carly inside the house in the aftermath of her actions. The police immediately took Carly into custody. As they investigated the scene, they learned of Carly's actions and the tragic chain of events that had unfolded earlier that day. The chilling nature of her behavior, particularly the lack of remorse and the callousness with which she invited her friend over to witness the aftermath, shocked everyone involved. The trial took place in September of 2024, several months after the tragic events of March 19th, 2024. The prosecution's argument focused on Carly's actions as deliberate, premeditated, and devoid of remorse. They sought to establish that Carly had carefully planned the murder of her mother, pointing to the chilling details that followed the shooting. One key piece of evidence was Carly's journal entries, in which she wrote about feeling detached from reality and her fascination with death and violence. The prosecution emphasized a particular entry where Carly established her desire for fire, seeing it as both beautiful and deadly. This, they argued, demonstrated an underlying intent to carry out a violent act. Further strengthening their argument, the prosecution presented Carly's behavior after the murder. They noted that instead was used to argue that Carly had no real emotional reaction to the gravity of her actions. The prosecution also painted a picture of Carly's cold demeanor in the aftermath of the crime, emphasizing the lack of remorse. They described how Carly's behavior following the murder suggested a sense of detachment from the consequences of her actions. Rather than showing signs of regret, she continued with her life as though unaffected by the loss of her mother. This callousness, the prosecution argued, proved that Carly had planned the entire crime and understood what she had done, despite any claims of mental health issues. In contrast, the defense painted a different picture of Carly, focusing on her mental health struggles and attempting to explain her actions as a result of a severe crisis. They argued that Carly was suffering from undiagnosed mental health issues, including depression, hallucinations, and possibly a disassociation, which impaired her judgment during the shooting. The defense presented testimony from a psychiatrist who claimed that Carly had exhibited signs of dissociative behavior in the days leading up to the murder, potentially as a result of emotional stress and unresolved trauma. The defense also noted that Carly had a history of mental health struggles, including self-harm. They argued that her previous conditions, combined with the lack of proper treatment, contributed to her erratic behavior on the day of the shooting. Carly's actions, they suggested, were not those of a calculated killer, but rather as the result of an overwhelmed teenager in a mental health crisis. Moreover, the defense tried to highlight Carly's positive relationship with her stepfather, Heath Smile, prior to the murder. They called Heath to the stand, where he testified about their family dynamics. Heath described a generally positive relationship with Carly, recalling his shared interests such as playing video games, spending time with their family pets, and supporting Carly's activities, including her love for playing the guitar. The defense argued that this evidence of a relatively stable life made it unlikely that Carly would have planned such a brutal crime unless something had gone terribly wrong in her mental health. Throughout the trial, Heath, of course, was visibly emotional. He spoke about the devastating loss of his wife and the shock of discovering that his stepdaughter had been responsible for the violence. He recounted how Carly had shot at him, but had failed to kill him during the struggle. Heath's emotional testimony provided a deeply personal perspective on the tragedy, as he conveyed not only his pain over losing his wife, but also his horror at being attacked by Carly, someone he helped raise and care for. Heath also explained the complexity of the situation, highlighting how he had tried to offer Carly support despite the escalating tensions in the family. His testimony was a profound reminder of the emotional turmoil that family members often face in the wake of a violent act, particularly when the perpetrator is someone they loved and cared for. After a week of intense arguments and emotional testimonies, the jury deliberated for about 2 hours before returning with a unanimous guilty verdict. sentencing phase followed, and the jury deliberated for an additional hour before deciding Carly's fate. In a heartbreaking conclusion to the case, Judge Faye Peterson sentenced Carly to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of her mother and the attempted murder of Heath. Carly also received a concurrent 10-year sentence for tampering with evidence by attempting to conceal her actions. The verdict brought some degree of closure to Heath and the rest of the family, though the emotional scars of the tragedy would remain. For Heath, the pain of losing his wife and the betrayal of his stepdaughter's actions were devastating. The court proceedings, while providing a measure of justice, did little to heal the profound loss and trauma that he endured. The trial and its verdict highlighted the tragic complexities of the case: a young girl's mental health struggles, a family torn apart by violence, and a mother's life taken in an act of such violence. So that is the case of Carly Gregg. I would love to hear your thoughts on this case, as it is a very controversial one, and it's still pretty fresh, as this did happen quite recently. If there are any other cases you